Welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Lens with your host, Jake and Scott. In this week's episode, we talk about Scott's favorite thing, bottled and bond whiskey. So we have a brand new bottle in market now with Bulleit. And so sit back and buckle in as we unpack that and everything that's happening there with Distillery Manager Courtney King. Courtney, welcome to the Bourbon Lens. Really appreciate you hopping on and doing this in such short order to make this happen. But thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here, talk about this release, talk about all things Bulleit. Exciting
Yeah.
times.
Really appreciate it. And this gets to, everyone gets to know you a little bit more out of this as well. And you get to nerd out about whiskey distillation as much as you want to tonight. So don't feel free to hold it
Fantastic.
back.
Fantastic. Yeah, sometimes I have to, but I love talking about it, love being here. So yeah, let's get into it.
That's awesome. And we were with you last week at the release of the Bottle and Bond Day, and we'll talk about that, or the Bottle and Bond, and we'll talk about that here momentarily. But it was a snowy day in Kentucky, and now today was 62 degrees. How about that for those
I
barrels getting some extraction?
I tell you, I grew up in Southeast Virginia, so climates and four seasons wasn't really something that I used to experience. We had like the hottest of summers and then like really, really cold without the snow.
Mm.
And I've spent like the past 6 years like up and down the Midwest. So, experiencing seasons is like a whole new thing for me. But yeah, I mean, we've got like all four, here in Kentucky in 2 weeks, which is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see now why, maybe bourbon has become a thing, for Kentucky. It's weird.
Just a little bit, it's not like it's a multi-billion dollar industry for the state,
Nah,
but
yeah. They're just cusping, the potential, right?
exactly. It's exactly our thoughts. But we're excited because we've gotten to hang out with you a few different times last week, and then previously you actually were our tour guide for the American Single Malt release that you all had last year, which we were telling the guys from Manifest who were nice enough to set this up for us that we did a tasting with the American Single Malt with our Patreon members and actually stood out amongst four unique American Single Malts in the 90 to 95 proof range. And so in that was Westward, Balcones, Bulleit, and Scott
Virginia.
Virginia Distilling Company. So
Yeah.
you were up there with I would say some of
Awesome.
the well-known American single malt folks, and it showed really well. So kudos to what you all are doing and how you all are using that distillate to create a new conversation for the marketplace.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we're really excited about, just the opportunities, right? Whether tapped or untapped yet. I think just the whiskey industry in and of itself is just a really, really exciting time, to be in it and just tap into all kinds of new markets. So yeah, you can add tour guide, to my credentials if that gets listed at any point, on a bubble or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's we always joke it's you have your job title and you've got all your responsibilities, and then it's always at the bottom of that and other responsibilities
As
that's your
assigned.
as assigned.
exactly.
Yeah.
As assigned.
Exactly.
Yep. Everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
and
got
those
a
always get dropped at the last minute too. It's like, hey, oh, by the way,
yeah.
we've got some media people that are popping in if you wanted to say hey. Oh, great, sure. Love
Yeah.
it.
I'll stay around. Are we drinking whiskey? Yes. Okay, I'm in.
Count me
No,
in. Great.
exactly. But really appreciate it. And we're going to talk about a lot of innovation. The American Single Malt was just one of them. You had the Bulleit 12-year rye. You had the re-release of I think, Bulleit 10 last year, and countless other things, right? Just the hits keep coming. But the star of the show is Bottled and Bond, but you're the star of this episode. And so we do want to learn a little bit about what Courtney does on a day-to-day basis, because you all have a unique process there in Shelby County that not everyone has. You haven't designed like in a master distiller. You have kind of a master team. That's kind of the way I look at it after you described it a few minutes ago. So, what's a day in the life of Courtney look like?
Yeah, it's a really exciting, team to be a part of. For what I would consider a pretty large scale facility, we're very family oriented, which, is something I take, very special to heart. A day in the life for me, I'm coming in, I'm checking in with our teams. We are 24/7 operation, looking to see, how things ran overnight, how things are running during the day, making sure there's no issues. From then it's usually popping in, doing the standard fun logistical stuff, emails, reports, efficiency tests, all that fun stuff. And then it can vary, from there. I definitely spend a lot of close time with our blending team. So within Bulleit, we've got 3 primary blenders, Andrew, Sam, and Dee. And they're fortunately right next door to us in our building. So I get to pop in there every day. We do sensory together. We talk about the highs and lows of whiskey production, whether it's on the front or back end. And, I think that's one of the things that makes Bulleit really special is, while what I'm making might not come out of a barrel for 5, 10, 12 years, I want to make sure that we're staying really close, with our blending team. Want to make sure that what I'm making is of the quality that they want because it makes their job that much easier. So we really stay very intimately close with all of those kinds of things, and we have that engagement from all the levels, whether it's our operating team on the floor all the way up to our senior leaders. So it's a fun job. I can't really complain. We joke around, we have fun, we're making whiskey, right? So it's not too bad of a day in the life.
Yeah, for sure. And you all have grown exponentially in Shelbyville as well, right? So much so that you all were like, we need more bourbon, and put a little shop out in Lebanon, Kentucky as well. What's it
A
like
little shop.
Micro shop.
yeah, micro shop.
Just a little guy.
Yeah, it's not as fancy as the one that we have in Shelbyville. The Lebanon one is just a workhorse, right? It just does production. Not to the consumer, right? Like that's not your bourbon trail.
I mean, again, we talk about nerding out from an engineering perspective. I've never seen an operation quite so magnificently designed as that building. I mean, from an automation and efficiency standpoint, right? Like let's be as creative but still efficient with the grains, that we're using. Let's extract as much as we can. Let's maximize our yields, while obviously making a product that meets the quality standards, that we set for ourselves. But yeah, it's just a small little shop there out in
little craft
Marion
distillery.
County.
Yeah, little
Yeah.
craft distillery.
Yeah, a little
Yeah.
craft. But no, I think it's great that you all continue to grow, and plant your flag. I mean, if you don't know Bulleit Bourbon or Bulleit Rye whiskey, you've kind of been missing the last 10 years because it's on every bar back. I mean, it is the call, right, for a lot of bartenders. And that's really cool because that gets your average drinker into the whiskey itself. And
yeah, I mean that's how it got me for sure. I mean,
yeah. So there you go. Great question. See, you're a natural at this. So how did you get into bourbon and whiskey, right? Because every person in your shoes has a unique path. Either your grandpappy did it and all of a sudden you're a distiller now, or you have some type of cool engineering degree and you took calculus 5000 and now you're doing that. So how did you get to where you are?
it's kind of like a combination of all those fun things. No, so I studied chemical and biomolecular engineering at Johns Hopkins University. Had really not a clue. I mean, I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do out of college. Obviously, there's like a lot of different industries you can get involved in. Like I mentioned earlier, I grew up in Virginia, so I was like East Coast, probably where I'll end up. But as you kind of go through, you're starting to look at jobs, where am I going to go, what am I going to do, etc. And I can remember the day like to the detail. I was sitting in my parents' kitchen in Virginia. I'm looking at jobs, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on this career board, etc. And my dad is behind me making pasta. He's a huge food guy. He brought that on to me. And he just kind of like casually in the background was like, if you're gonna like move away for work, like you better get into something that's worth visiting. And I mean, like a light bulb, and he's a huge bourbon guy. I mean, he's a horse vet, but like he's the one that kind of got us all into Manhattans and bourbon, and my whole family's into it now. But it was like a light bulb. I was like, well, I guess that's what I got to do. So I stumbled upon the supply leadership development program with Diageo, and just applied and, went through that. And 3 years later after that program, I ended up at Bulleit, and I've been there for the past 3 years now, which is crazy. And yeah, I cannot imagine having been in any other industry. It's such a great experience. It's pairing creativity with engineering with whiskey. So, I mean, I could talk all day about it. It's really like a dream come true to work in it. It's a blast.
I was gonna say he's probably really happy that you didn't like move to like New Jersey and enter like the pharmaceutical industry or something.
Yeah,
like
or like
that.
oil. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I've lived in Tennessee, I've lived in Illinois, so they've come and visited, and he's on like bourbon pages, and he like send me screenshots and be like, what's this? Should I buy this? And again, like he lives in Virginia, so it's a controlled state. They've got like ABC stores, so like they barely get anything beyond, regular Bulleit, regular makers, regular beam, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
he likes
There's
to visit.
advantages to controlled state and disadvantages, right?
Oh,
The
yeah, for
price,
sure.
you know the price in a controlled state, but it may not be as available. It's going to be available in a
Exactly.
non-controlled state, but you may not know the price.
It's
You may not know the
available if
price.
you're in the know with the government.
Yeah.
Right, sure.
Somebody's
Well, and
getting it.
like, yeah,
Somebody's
exactly.
getting
I mean,
those
he'll
rare
he'll text me
releases.
randomly and be like, we got this, and I'm like, that's $200 here,
Yeah.
if we find it. So
Oh, the price creep on bourbon for the consumer is rough. But speaking of, you all have not done that. And Scott, it's time for you to stand up right now, put your hand over
Yeah.
your heart, and recite your daily routine. What is the requirements for bottled and bond whiskey?
Oh, so you want me to do the Pledge of Allegiance?
The pledge of the bottled and bond.
let's hear it.
So we got single source, single season, distillation season, 6 months, right? Minimum 4 years, bottled at exactly 100 proof. And I mean, that's it, right? Like, I'm not
It
missing
must
anything.
be aged in a federally bonded warehouse.
Well,
Can't forget that one.
every warehouse is bonded though, right?
Not in the mountains of West Virginia.
Well, yeah, yeah, you're right.
And according to the Google, it must be clearly labeled with the name of the distillery that made it. So
There you go.
Yeah,
that
well,
is
I hit the
something
high
I did not
points.
know. I would
I
have
didn't know
gone
that
with
either, actually.
I
I'll
would have
admit
gone
to
with
that
the
one.
4 things that you all said, or you said. I would have not added the last. So
Well, so that's why some distilleries list 2 DSPs, because they might bottle it at another location than where they distilled it, but it's the same. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm looking at a bottled and bond, that was purchased, like as a secondary, and like it's got, the company name and then the DSP. So definitely interesting when it does have that, where it's aged and bottled and blah 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 blah.
And I've been saying it for what, 6, 7 years now since we did
Yeah.
the podcast. Like, bottled and bond is a wave, and I think it's important to the consumer. It still is. Probably not as important as 1897, when the people were like mixing chemicals into bourbon and whiskey. But I think it's important to the end consumer when they're looking at a shelf. They can look at it, see that it says bottled and bond, and it means something. They don't have to go searching on the label for like all the little details.
Yeah, for sure. So
Yeah.
this is kind of a milestone for you all, right, Courtney? Like this came out, hit market a couple weeks ago, and it's fully out there now. Again, at a really affordable price, under $60, which is awesome. But what's it mean to you all, right? You've been here for the last, we'll call it third, right, of the the aging process, and you were able to partner with the team to create that ratio that created the specific blend for this bottled and bond. What's it been like just to kind of like, plant your flag on this bottle that's out in the market now?
It's exciting. I mean, I know that's like a redundant word, but I'm fortunate, to have come into the team at a really pivotal time already 3 years ago for the site, for the brand. You know, I'm fortunate to work with, I think there's 12 team members, which is like well over 25% of the workforce at the site, that were there, you know, when this liquid was made.
Mm,
And you know, that's huge in and of itself, you know. So there's already like this pride factor of just, you know, hey, we made this, you know, it's ours, we're proud of it. Um, and yeah, I mean, just the concept of Bulleit, you know, where it started out 6, 7, 8 years ago, just being two brands, you know,
mm,
two flagship labels to multiple, you know, at this point, and to release this, you know, it's an exciting time, you know,
mm,
and we're really, really proud of it. And for me, the other thing that just I love calling out is that this liquid came from our very first distillation season. So, you know, it's not just to say like, hey, we've released this, but like we released this as we started up. It's meeting the expectations of the quality that we hoped for and planned for, and we're introducing it to the market because we're this proud of it, you know.
yeah.
And yeah, I can't rave enough about it. When we first started kind of doing some sensory of the liquid about 3, 4 years ago, you know, it was, like I said, it was really when I first kind of came to the site, but I was still kind of a part of some of that stuff. You know, we knew it was of age to be bottled and bond, but we could tell that it needed a little bit more time, which just gave us more time to really plan out, you know, how we wanted this all to come together. And I really feel like there couldn't have been a better time to release this than right now. So yeah.
Mm,
I think that's the
yeah.
most impressive part too. It's like you could have put this out at 4 years. You could have put it out at
Yeah.
5 years, 6 years, but you're like, no, we're gonna wait till it's ready, till we believe
Yeah.
it's the best it can be, and we're gonna put that out. And it's 7 years old. I mean,
Yeah, and that's, you know, I give all the kudos to those blenders, right? I mean,
yeah,
I certainly play a role with that, but yeah, for them to have such a pulse, you know, on the inventory that we have, to know the sweet spots, you know, of our liquid, to know like, look, it's good. We could release it, but give it
Hmm.
12 months, you know,
yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be great.
Yeah.
And you know, to your point, you know, Scott, like you mentioned earlier, like there's a several, you know, amount of bottled and bonds that exist. And so you want to make sure, you know, that you time that and you release it where it's gonna make a big splash. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I also think 100 proof, like these are more exciting releases for Scott and I as drinkers. You know, the enthusiast wants the burn your face off hazmat, you know, liquid, where the everyday consumer, bartender, you know, they want something that they can play with and manipulate and enjoy.
Yeah.
Um, and there's nothing wrong with barrel proof, barrel strength whiskey. Like that's not me
Nope.
crapping on that. It's just from an enjoyability perspective, like I'm sipping on the 10-year right now, and that's at 91.2 proof, and it packs a ton of flavor and a ton of punch. Like it gives you everything you
Yep.
need. I couldn't imagine this at 130 proof. It would be a lot. um,
Yeah.
I mean, well, we sampled a little bit of that last week, but
yeah.
to your point, yeah, I mean, you know, when Dee did that tasting last week, you know, we did regular orange label, we did bottled and bond, and then we did cast strength, and I love the way she does that kind of lead that tasting because you really get to see the transition and like the growth of some of those like key flavors.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's what's so cool about the 100 proof because I feel like you can really dabble either side. You know, you can drink it neat and it's not gonna like punch you in the face. You can
Yep.
drink it in a Manhattan and it's still gonna bring something to the table, maybe a little bit more than like your standard, you know, orange label bullet. But yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. And I think, you know, Scott, you said it before we got on. I mean, it's a damn good whiskey. Um,
Mhm.
You know, do you recall you know, sipping that a little bit last week and anything that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I got like this it was almost like a buttery like cinnamon roll. I don't know if that's a good way to describe it, but it was almost like a cinnamon roll that kind of was just like falling apart. Like it just had like like a cakey breadiness to it, but it was also like had that like cinnamon rye punch, but then also I don't know, it was just desserty and I don't know how I don't know how to describe it the best way, but I just
Yeah.
really enjoyed it. I mean,
Like the
it like
toasted marshmallow, toasted oak, but
Yeah.
then the finish has like this like hidden dark cherry kind of thing in the background that I just love.
Mm.
And the other thing that I really like attest to the quality piece is, you know, you look at Bulleit, you look at Bulleit 10, you look at cast strength, now bottled in bond, like there is this very common, perfectly woven gold thread of quintessential Bulleit flavor, you know, that you can expect. It might be a little bit different, might show itself in a different face slightly, but it's still there.
Yeah.
And I love that so much.
I was honestly expecting a little bit more of the Bulleit, like the Bulleit bite that you get from like the orange label, like that spicy note. It was way more rounded and definitely surprising in a good way. Because like Bulleit orange label to me, it's got that like, ooh, this could almost be like a rye whiskey. Like at times, like when I drink that, I'm like, ooh, this got some, tingling in the throat. But this one is just more rounded, and I'm sure it's the age that you're just, playing with a few more years of age, and a little bit more proof. Uh, so I was impressed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, after we had a couple cocktails and we came back and we enjoyed that, Scott and I got neat pours. After we had great food from Chef Damaris Phillips, she crushed it.
Fangirl moment for me.
Oh, me too. I
Wasn't
was
that
like,
cool?
I was like,
I had to get a photo.
I was like, can I go talk to her? Is this right? Like, I watch her on the Food Network all the time.
You say,
Like you talked about being a foodie. I'm like, I was a foodie last week. I tried everything, like twice, maybe three times
oh my
over.
gosh.
Oh,
You
no,
had
I
to
just,
like slip a five to like the
Jason,
people like her catering staff
yeah.
like hey
yeah,
find
Can I get
me when you
another
come back
chicken and a
around.
biscuit, please?
yeah. It was the only downfall. I only had one chicken biscuit.
Oh yeah,
They
see
were
you
good.
didn't slip the five, that's the
No, I
problem.
didn't.
Yeah.
I slipped the five to the bartender because he was working hard.
As you
Trying to
should.
help the people. But man, the after having all the food and having a few cocktails, the the Bulleit bonded stood up. And so it did have that flavor. It paired well actually with all the kind of salty, savory foods that we had.
Mhm.
And then I went and had banana pudding afterwards. It was a great choice to top that off. But you know what's really interesting to me is so you do have the full portfolio now, right? So you have the orange label, the 10-year, I guess would be the next, and then the bottled and bond, and then the barrel strength, right? So that would be the order of all of those. Um, is there a reason why the bottled and bond is? I mean, obviously, I know that it's because it's 100 proof, but why the 10 year is not higher than the 100 proof?
In terms of proof,
Yeah,
um I I would say that the reasoning just kind of, I mean, obviously bottle and bond's got to be 100 proof, but
yeah,
I would say for 10-year, I mean, I think we kind of wanted to find the sweet spot of where you're going to be able to again find that middle ground, right?
yeah,
So like, you know, 10-year for me is like, yeah, obviously I'm biased, but you know, it's the easily probably one of the best liquids that you can get for the price point, you know, at that age statement, right? And I mean,
agreed.
it's just I could rave all day about that, but that's not what we're here to talk about. But yeah, I think it's just, you know, to not get too nerdy, I think, you know, there's really a fine line to play with proof and the flavors that you want to kind of come to the table.
Yeah,
I think for 10-year, you know, that was the right balance to dilute some of those probably more mature characteristics, you
mm-hmm,
know, whether it's your woodies or your toasted oaks or your dark, you know, vanillas and caramels, brown sugars. You want to subdue those just a little bit more
yeah,
as opposed to a 7 to 8 year liquid. You probably can let it sit, you know, at that 100 or even cast strength proof and it's
Mhm.
not going to be too woody, because I think that's where, with bourbons, the new barrel really comes into play. The
Yeah.
further up you go, the further, you got to like toe that line a little bit more.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No,
I think with the got
you got it.
I was gonna say with the 10-year, I find that that is one of the bourbons that I like to just like pour and sit with.
Oh, absolutely.
Like I could nose it like for an hour, like just pour extra in the glass.
It's
Uh,
so good.
and it just evolves so much. It's just so fragrant, and I think that it benefits from a little bit of dilution, which if anybody's ever not done it, take a high proof spirit and add water to it yourself.
Yep.
And it'll just wake it up. It's just like you agitated it enough and now it just opens it up. So I think the
Yeah.
10-year really benefits from that. I can only imagine what it would taste like at a higher proof. But I think at the proof it's at, it's just one of those bourbons you just want to sit down with and just explore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's like I said, I'll tip my hat to our blending team any day. I mean, they just, that's their specialty, right? Is finding, they know what flavors they really want to accentuate, and we've got those quality expectations, and they find that sweet spot
For
and,
sure.
and hit
And
it.
we're not that far off from a 10-year Shelbyville release. It's only a few more years, right?
Not far.
Only time will tell.
Always be
It's already,
planning.
yeah, it's already
Always.
2025. It's already 2025.
It's
So,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
What's also, I think, really unique about this is you all have a lot to play with. If people have never been to Bulleit, they don't think they truly understand it, right? And you got to go way back in the history of how these recipes were created and how the previous, team as Diageo took this over, like what they had to work with, and now like there's a lot of history to the brand
Oh yeah.
overall. And so, the recipe makeup that you all have and the different yeast strains and the different mash bills, um, you know, from your perspective, right, you can create a vast variety of recipes that could be crafted and entered into these arrangements, right? You have your typical higher rye, then you have your kind of lower rye, and then you have your innovation stuff that you do work with from time to time. From a distillation perspective, what's that like to be able to play with all the different yeast strains to create liquid to give your blenders a much wider portfolio to work with?
Speaking to my heart, really. No, it's like the one of the best parts about the job. From just a like quality standpoint, it's like I've got all these different tools, in the
Hmm.
tool shed to work with. I've got a wrench, I've got a screwdriver, I've got a set of pliers, and the way I always describe it, when I do tours and conversations like this is like I always describe it as like there's a triangle. So you've got your blending team, which for me is, my main customer. I'm trying to make something that they can work with. So they're the ones telling me like, hey, we want you to produce fruity, or we want you to produce spicy, or we want you to produce sweet. And then we've kind of got like the technical corner of the triangle that's like, okay, fruity equals isoamyl acetate, or spicy equals eugenol and 4VG, and like these are the congeners that create that sensory note.
Mhm.
And then there's like the operational side that's like,
Mm,
okay, what do I need to do in my mashing phase, in my fermentation phase, in my distillation phase to extract those flavors or those congeners that create that flavor. And
yeah.
honestly, I mean, in my time in this industry, like there's a very finite amount of people that can speak all three of those languages, that
Hmm.
really understand how the process from beginning to end, even boiling down all the way to your raw ingredients, where are you sourcing your grains? Where is your yeast? What yeast are you using?
Yeah.
How do those things factor in and affect, that overarching process? So, it's something that I could speak all day about. I love about this industry, what I love about this job, what I love about Bulleit, because we're so tapped into those three kind of aspects of the triangle. I mean, we literally talk about it multiple times a week, with all of the different things that we're making to produce these great products. And yeah, I mean, from whether it's we're making bourbon, whether it's we're making single malt, whether it's we're making rise or innovations, like, we want to make sure that from the very start of the process that we know what the customer, in this case
Mm.
for me, the blending team wants, because we know then what that's going to turn into coming out of the barrel.
Mm. And do you have a favorite child? Like which one you like to
Oh gosh.
distill most often, or maybe a problem child, like which one may cause you the most issues to, kind of hone in?
I'll tell you, for me, it'll probably have to be single malt, at least right now,
Mm.
only because when I came to the site, we were still in the kind of how to optimization stage,
Yeah.
like we kind of know what we want to produce, but like we haven't gotten all the kinks worked out. And it's,
Mm.
truth be told, like it's a challenging recipe to make in a bourbon distillation setup.
Yeah.
Uh, so, and over the past 3 years, I mean, we have really, really honed in on it. So like,
Mm.
subtle tea is like single malt's only going to get better,
Yeah.
from the release last year.
So is there a particular yeast strain that works better with 100% malted barley?
We've kind of honed in on that, yeah.
Oh,
It's
cool.
taken some time. We've done a couple different releases, or not releases, but production campaigns with it. But yeah, we've really honed in on one that I think works the best.
And you all can use
Interesting.
those 5 different yeast strains at any given time with any recipe that you all work with, right?
Yeah, yep, for
Okay.
sure. So
So
that's what makes it fun.
yeah.
So
Also,
what's the best
selfishly.
tasting one off the still? Like what's your favorite?
Distillate wise,
Yeah,
oh
off the
geez.
still.
I don't know. God, there's so many to
Put
choose
you on the
from. I mean,
spot.
honestly, we've just in my tenure, we've probably made close to 20 different SKUs. So it's really hard to pick. I will say, we did, when we did single malt last year, and like I said, we just really seemed to get the quality right recently.
Mm.
Not that it wasn't right before, but I mean, really, really just hitting it, on the head. And I opened a fermenter, because we've got closed top fermenters. I opened the Manway one day, and I mean, it was just like smacked in the face with this like banana bread
Mm.
hits like bran oat muffin kind of thing.
Mm.
That was just incredible. Like, to get it out of a fermenter was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So that would, like I said, I mean, I might be picking on single malt a little bit, but it's because we only do those but so often. So when you get that kind of variation, I think you you
Yeah.
might favor it a little bit. I
I
don't
think
know.
when something is different or interesting, it speaks to you a little bit more. But
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
No, I think it's super interesting. And, people always talk about like, oh, malted barley, doesn't do much for the bourbon. It does a shit ton for bourbon, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, what an exciting time with the category, right?
I
I
know.
mean,
I mean, might as well take
uh,
advantage of it. I mean, they got ratified, and you all were, a release out there before the ratification. I think the adaptation by the large players to put out American single malt is great, whether it's you all or Brown Foreman or whomever, right? I think it's really cool. Because that only helps the movement of it, right? It only helps
yeah.
rising tides raise all ships, right? And I think that's what the whiskey community in America is alike. I can't speak for the world whiskey community. I can only really speak to what happens in Kentucky in the region. When something goes crazy, everyone kind of pitches in, and while you compete with one another, you're like, I can't let my brother fail or sister fail. And I think that's probably one of the best things about the whiskey relationships I've seen over the last 6 years doing the podcast and getting to know the people behind the
Yeah.
brands.
I appreciated that too, for how they categorized that label,
Yeah.
respecting the craft industry, respecting some of these, Bulleit included, bigger dogs that are kind of wanting to introduce their own into it. And so, not limiting all of these different players. So new barrels, used barrels, pot stills, column stills. I think that's special. Not to eliminate anybody that might already be in it. But
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a fun category to see how it grows over the next 2 to 5 years, really.
Yeah.
And on the innovation standpoint, that's the other half of what I love about the job is just there's this whole untapped market of whiskey drinkers where we think 20, 30 years ago, like everybody was drinking it neat. Now, there's the cocktail movement, and now there's like this innovative whiskey category coming through, which for you guys is, I mean, for me too, but for you guys is really fun because you guys get to just try different stuff like all the
Oh,
time.
for sure.
Yeah. So it's an interesting point because, the Bulleit American Single Malt, I know we're not super focused on that, but you guys use exclusive new charred oak, but we all know that the Diageo portfolio is vast. Is there
Yeah.
any playing around with different barrels or things like that? Because American Single Malt fortunately has a lot of that leeway that you can play around with used oak and things like that too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the opportunities are really endless. Like you said, we've got a lot of resources across the pond, down south, just around us. We spoke on a panel on Friday. I mean, a thing for me would be, Bulleit's got this really great program with Bulleit and beer. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. So, we partner with breweries in various states. They'll
Yeah.
finish a beer with our used barrels, and I think there's some opportunity maybe to tap into that. So yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely, in the forefront of possibilities. And yeah, we'll see what happens.
It's just that can they do it at the scale? Can those small breweries do it at the scale that Bulleit and Diageo need?
Right.
What's the distiller or what's the brewery in Lexington? Is it Essex?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So West Six, I believe, was what we kicked off the program with.
Yeah.
And I know we've done one in Virginia, we've done one in maybe Colorado. There's been several states. I can't keep up with all of them, but
It's
I
very
try
cool.
to stay tapped into it because yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
And the way they market it and everything like that, I think is really neat too. So yeah.
Hmm.
Going way back to one of my earliest memories of Bulleit was when you guys did the tattoo bottles,
Oh yeah,
Mm.
I have one of
which
those.
yeah, that
I
was
had to, I had to get a friend to help me out to get it, but yeah.
yeah. I'm not a tattoo guy, but I thought that was one of the coolest like collaboration type like yes, it was Bulleit orange label, but it was just it stood out on a shelf and I thought that was cool. But
Yeah.
again, it was one of my early memories of like limited edition type whiskeys.
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I think we talked a little bit about just about everything from an innovation perspective, but we would be remiss in saying, this is or asking, is this going to be an annual type of release that you all look forward to, and will there be variations, right? Because there's going to be different distillation seasons and maybe different yeast strains that go into the blending process. So, will consumers be able to look forward to additional bottled and bond releases?
Yeah, definitely. The timing of those releases, I think, will vary year to year. I think that's, one of the great things about, Bullet and the quality expectations and just the blending team and the process. So, we survey, we pull samples on our maturing inventory every year. So the timing I think could vary, year on year, but yeah, this is definitely something we plan to keep, as part of the Bullet portfolio. I think what's special about bottled and bond is you appreciate, the variations from release to release. So, you can expect, that key high rye mash bill, you can expect, this really well-rounded liquid, maybe the next year's release could have a little bit more of a marshmallow note, where this one
Hmm.
had, that toasted oak cherry. And I also think, it's going to vary, based on the blending team, what year, like what age those liquids are.
Yeah.
Uh, But yeah, I'm excited that, you know, that's the plan for us, is to really keep this in the umbrella, keep it in the portfolio, because Scott said, it's damn good whiskey.
I mean, I think that's the best way to say it is. It's damn good whiskey, and I think everyone needs to go buy a bottle ASAP.
You can find
Because
one. That's
yeah,
the
if you
hard
can
part.
find one, you had to get on it early, right? When 2 weeks ago, before all the press releases came out, and it was in market. I kept seeing pictures of it, and Scott and I were like, "Hold on, what?
What?
Why?"
That's not supposed to be there.
Yeah, that's not supposed to be on
Wait
shelves. How
a
did you get
second.
that? Yeah. And then people were like, oh, yeah, I picked it up at the local store for $45. I was like, that's cheaper than the press release says. Like, people are getting, like, this is a hot deal. Um, but I think that's one of the coolest things is it's an affordable whiskey at 7 years. It prices really well against the market. And it's going to create a lot of cool opportunities for blind tastings. Scott and I have already chatted about this, Heaven Hill Bottled and Bond versus Bulleit Bottled and Bond. It'd be a really fun matchup. Both 7 years, both 100 proof. So we have a future episode already in mind with that distillate. So maybe we'll send you in a little blind sample, and you can
I was gonna
see
say, if
what
you
you
need a
like.
guest taster, just give me a call. I'll
Yeah,
make some time.
She's like, I'm pegging this one as Bulleit, 100%.
yeah, bingo.
How embarrassing would that be? No, I'm just-
Well, the good thing is there's very unique flavor profiles with both of them, but it'd be
Oh
fun to
yeah.
do them blind and see, how you like each of them. But, this won't be the last time we talk about Bulleit and Bottled and Bond here on the Bourbon Lens. And Courtney, we really appreciate you making time for us later on a Tuesday, right before Bottled and Bond Day, to make sure we get to spread the good news of the new release and celebrate Monday, March 3rd in the best way possible. So really appreciate you joining us. And we look forward to having you again on sometime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the time. As always, love talking about whiskey. So yeah, cheers to that.
Cheers,
Cheers. Thanks
everybody.
a lot.